Understanding S3 properties. All right, pop quiz. What was the first cloud-based service that AWS released to the public in 2004? Answer? SQS, the simple queue service. I know, it's not S3. I know that's the topic of this. S3 came out in 2006 alongside the suite of Amazon Web Services. So it came out along with many other things, and it was the first time that AWS made the claim that we have a bucket of storage in the sky that can do 11 nines of durability. And people are like, how is that possible? I mean, they actually have stats on this, and it's something like if you store 1 million files in an S3 bucket, once every like 10,000 or 11,000 years, you'll actually lose one object out of there because of a failure of some sort. I mean, it's just astounding the kind of durability. And how do they do it? Well, what they do is they, number one, rely on RAID technology, so you have redundancy of disks within a data center, but then they replicate that not only to multiple devices within the data center, but then they replicate that to multiple data centers within the region, so you actually have multiple physical locations, multiple devices, multiple hard drive redundancy all over the place. I don't know how the formula works, but essentially 11 nines of durability is what you end up with, but I will say you will not see that, still to this day, in an SLA. This is just advertising on a website, but there's no contract essentially that's signed. But I will say from the feedback of the world, even my own experience, I can say I've never, ever lost anything in an S3 bucket. Now, what is this bucket, though? What is this bucket of storage in the sky that we use? I mean, what can you use it for? Well, Amazon engineers will tell you it is far more database than file system. Matter of fact, as you get into this thing, you see things like the folders, and they're yellow, they look like folders, but when you click on them, you start getting just the feel that this is just like a big string somewhere. It's like an identifier. It's not really a file system that I'm navigating. However, there are all kinds of tools out there that let you use it as a file system. Like you can go in OS X or Windows and map a drive to this. You can try and even install applications on this mapped drive and all that kind of stuff. And I will tell you, it won't take you long before things start going very poorly. Amazon engineers will frown upon whatever that. They're very sad when they look at somebody trying to do that, because this is designed as a object store. It is meant to store static objects, or blob store, if you want to use one of the catchphrases of now. What is that? Binary large object. OB, object. Yeah, it's binary or big or blob. It's a blob. Essentially, just put a static file there, and that's what it's meant for. It's not meant for file locks and access and all that kind of stuff. It is definitely not meant to install applications on, even though people have tried all kinds of crazy things. And the result, you get corruption. You're going to get files that are just broken, because really at the root of S3 is a database style engine. Now, this does give you unlimited, as far as your pocketbook can stretch, region-specific storage. I showed you that it will actually replicate between all data centers, availability zones within a region, but it does not go outside of that region. So S3 is designed for that. It is also designed for write once, read many. And when you understand how the write mechanism works, it'll start making sense. Okay, write mechanism is designed that all facilities must acknowledge before a write is considered successful, meaning you can't read an object. So until it's fully written. So I've got a 1 gigabyte file, right, and I store that in S3. Well, that's actually replicating to all the different data centers so that you have that redundant storage there. Write once, right? And only once all of the data centers have that do you get a success message back saying we have successfully written that file. Now it's designed to be read many, because now, depending on where you're running your EC2 instances, it can read from the local S3 storage in that specific availability zone. So what's the ideal thing for S3 storage? Well, you can see it right here. That makes S3 a great backup store, where you can just have a backup running, storing data to S3. It's replicated all the different sites, and it sits there. It's an object at rest until somebody requires that backup to come out, or put some AVI files on there, streaming files, some MP3 files, some essentially just static files that need to be accessed. Not the kind of files that are being modified on the fly, that open, that are having multiple people try and access it. That is not the design of S3 at all. But S3 does support REST and SOAP communication. What are these? These are APIs. REST, not an ARI, an API, to where you actually have outside procedures that can call into the S3 bucket. REST being essentially, if you are into the web coding language at all. HTTP requests, those kind of things are all done using the RESTful API. It has been around for a long time. And so essentially, when I send a GET request for my web page, that is considered the RESTful API. S3 can respond to those kind of requests, and that's why you can actually serve static websites out of there. SOAP communication. SOAP. What? I don't remember what SOAP stands for, but you can Google SOAP API and you'll get that. Essentially, this allows you to integrate. It's just another API that you can use within your web page. You know, say you've got a web page that is served up, and over here you got some pretty picture, you know, like this little kid or something like that is sitting there on the picture, and this little kid represents the third grade reading library, right? Which is a website for the school. I just come up with this stuff on the fly, and it's brilliant. And then over here, I don't know why these are such great ideas to me. Then over here, you actually see the third grade reading library, right? That is actually stored in an S3 bucket. That would be like a SOAP style API where we could integrate that into our web page and so on. So something else I just found out as I was getting ready to run through the slide, I was like, let me just say, it's funny because I was like, what does SOAP stand for again? And I forgot even before I like Googled it three minutes ago, and then bam, here I am, I don't remember. But it just late breaking news, S3 now also supports BitTorrent, which threw me for a loop. I'm like, what? Just because when I think of BitTorrent, I'm right there with you, buddy. I'm thinking of every illegal thing that is done using BitTorrent, and that's not the case. BitTorrent is actually being used for good, not evil, in some small regions of the world. I think, you know, little 5 square foot areas, they actually have good ideas for anyway, BitTorrent allows you to serve all kinds of files that can be spread across masses. And initially I was like, why would it took me like, I got halfway through the thought, why would Amazon want to support BitTorrent from S3? I'm like, oh yeah, because Amazon charges for storage and they charge for bandwidth out of AWS. I'm like, what a cash cow. Somebody starts running, of course I think of Amazon as a business, right? Somebody starts running BitTorrent from their S3 bucket and they throw a little ISO image of some Linux distribution up there because they're completely legal, right? And word in the industry gets that, then bam, that's going to start serving. But I mean, legal I talk too fast sometimes, right? Legal purposes, maybe you've got a large organization, American Express, you know, credit card processing company, where they have, you know, facilities worldwide, thousands and thousands of employees, and they've got these central distribution points where they might use BitTorrent to, I don't know, do something legal. Right? I only know illegal uses of BitTorrent. So anyway, we've got standard and reduced redundancy options for S3. Now, you might look at this as a crazy option, like, okay, one of the selling points of S3 is you get the 99.999 of redundancy. Why would you want to go with this? Well, first off is the cost, which it's not that much of a cost savings, but it's some. The second reason is because there's some stuff you put in S3 you just don't care about. Meaning, for instance, let me just take CBT nuggets, right? I'm recording this video right now. I save this thing as an AVI file. That thing jets into a transcoding engine, which CBT nuggets runs through Amazon Web Services. It's like churn, and it comes out with iPhone versions of this video, web versions of this video, high quality, low quality, fast. Matter of fact, you see the variable speed. You're like, how do they do that? Well, they actually render faster version streams of the video that they can play on a whim. If you ever, I don't know how, I can't even keep up with my own thought, but some people listen to me on like double speed. I'm like, and so they actually connect to a different video stream. But you know what all these files are? Fluff. Really, I mean, you've got the original AVI CBT nuggets, and they generate all these fluff versions of it to deliver. You know what? Why not pay a whole lot less when you start adding together all the cost of that? That's a significant amount of storage that they're using. Let's pay a whole lot less for these things that, worst case scenario, we lose a few files. Well, we just churn that thing out and regenerate those different formats, right? So that's where a lot of that comes into play. Bucket names do have to be globally unique. So if I were to go to S3 and I were to say, hey, I want to create the Jeremy bucket, it's going to go, sorry, Jeremy's in use. I'm going to have to do like Jeremy 59632B because we're talking globally unique within the entire region of S3 there. So between, you know, all the people that are using that, we have to have some kind of unique name. It's not too hard, but essentially you just need to make sure you can't use common names. Also, the S3, and this one rubbed me wrong when I first started thinking about it, supports server-side encryption of data at rest, right? So I'm starting to think about this. I'm like, okay, S3 supporting encryption of data at rest. So that just means you've got this bucket, right, of data, and you throw all this stuff in there. Amazon actually has an easy, like the Staples easy button, an easy button that you push. You don't even have to worry about encryption keys. It just does it all for you. You push the easy button and bam, everything in your S3 bucket is encrypted. So if somebody ever takes the hard drives out of one of those regions and runs away with it, it's encrypted. It's mush. They can't have access to it. And that's what rubbed me wrong. I'm like, okay, wait a second. I don't know where Amazon Web Services data centers are. Do you? I mean, if I said, hey, what's the street address of an AWS data center or availability zone, you and I would be like, I don't know. I mean, that's kind of the secret ninja nature of AWS is they don't tell you where these things are. So I'm like, okay, why would I be concerned with somebody going into one of the Amazon Web Services regions to my server that's hosting, I shouldn't say my server, to my stuff, to to Amazon stuff and take my data out of there? What's the deal? Well, I mean, all this is Amazon Web Services going, you know what? The world is a messed up place. And we might hire a messed up security guard that, takes a $50,000 bribe to go empty our data center of all the hard drives, and he takes them and hands them off to somebody and runs. So why don't you just push the easy button, encrypt all that stuff, so that we can make sure if somebody does, take those hard drives, or there's some guy standing outside who, after the hard drive goes through the hammering machine and magnetic erase and all that, takes the pieces and puts them all together, at least your stuff is all encrypted, which, when I thought of it that way, made me feel better. You now know the core properties of S3. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.